For the Russian soldiers on the front lines in Ukraine, life has never been easy. But now, in the spring of 2026, their situation is worse than ever before. In Moscow, Russia's leaders are becoming desperate as they gradually lose control over territory, and their soldiers are being killed faster than they can recruit new ones, month after month. For the ordinary soldiers in the trenches, the impact of this is tremendous. Ukraine is trying to kill them. Their own commanders are also trying to kill them. And their government seems to be trying to buy victory simply by sacrificing human lives. After 4 years of continuous fighting, Russia's war machine has shown that it can keep going even with huge casualties. But now it is struggling to keep up with the pace of the war, and when it can't crush the Ukrainian soldiers, it makes up for the shortfall by crushing its own men. In 2023, prisoners taken from jails were sent to the front lines, often forced to charge at gunpoint. But now, almost all Russian soldiers are in this situation as well. For them, it's no longer a question of whether they can avoid death on the front line. The only question left is how it will come. Will it be from drones? From Ukraine's drones that are almost impossible to stop, or from their own command that's ready to sacrifice them? But before we start, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. The threat from Ukraine. Now, before we start this episode, we need to clarify something important. Despite the statements of Russian propagandists, especially whoever encouraged their top general to say that on April 21, Moscow had gained 1,700 kilometers of territory this year. This war is being closely monitored. And honestly, Russia's claims about their victories seem far from reality. Yes, there may be small groups of Russian soldiers sent on near-certain death missions, suicide missions in what is called the kill zone, who may have made some advances. These contribute to the claim that 1,700 kilometers have been gained. But the problem is most of these groups are quickly identified and wiped out at the front line, where up to 95% of casualties are caused by drone swarms that are almost always present in the sky. This war is being monitored by many independent and respected monitoring groups. And according to them, the real situation is far from what Russia claims. For our discussion today, these are the things you need to understand. Russia's spring offensive is progressing very slowly. It seems that their ultimate goal is to capture the large city of Slavyansk, an important part of Ukraine's defensive fortress belt in the north. But in exchange for the small amount of territory they've gained, they've lost a huge number of soldiers. In fact, according to a combination of Western intelligence and independent monitoring groups, Russia's casualties have been increasing faster than their recruitment for several months now. Meanwhile, Ukraine has managed to regain some small areas of territory, especially in the southern regions, and they have succeeded in weakening and exhausting Russian units. But this doesn't mean that Ukraine no longer has problems. Both sides are facing serious challenges. These include Ukraine's shortage of manpower and Russia's growing shortage of drone technology. For now, if either side has any momentum, it's very small. And it seems that Russia's spring offensive will not achieve its objectives. Although it's important to discuss Ukraine's situation on the battlefield, what we'll focus on now is the condition of Russian soldiers on the front line. Because of their experience, we can more clearly see the major shortcomings that Moscow is facing now. This includes the rapid advancement of Ukraine's technology, changes in their tactics, and even the mistakes and mismanagement on Russia's own side. Overall, we can divide the problems of the Russian soldiers into two parts: things that Ukraine is doing against them, and things that their own command are doing against them. On the Ukrainian side, the biggest change is happening. It's the emergence of a new generation of drones, designs that Russia has never encountered before. To make it clearer, let's listen to what Aptia Laudanov, a senior commander from the Chechen Special Forces and a close ally of Ramzan Kadyrov, had to say. According to him, these new drones, which Russian state media even described as if they came from Mars, represent a significant improvement in quality. There has been a significant improvement in the quality of UAVs on the front line. In other words, Ukraine has introduced a new generation of drones that are causing serious problems in logistics. Meanwhile, Ukraine has managed to regain some small areas of territory, especially in the southern regions, and they have succeeded in weakening and exhausting Russian units. But this doesn't mean that Ukraine has no more problems. Both sides are facing serious challenges. These include Ukraine's shortage of manpower and Russia's growing shortfall in drone technology. For now, if either side has any momentum, it's very small, and it looks like Russia's spring offensive will not achieve its objectives. Although it's important to discuss Ukraine's situation on the battlefield, what we'll focus on now is the condition of Russian soldiers on the front line. Because of their experience, we can see more clearly the major problems that Moscow is facing. Now, this includes the rapid advancement of Ukraine's technology, changes in their tactics, and even the mistakes and mismanagement on the part of Russia itself. They can fly day and night and are almost impossible to hear until the last second before impact. They can't be detected by ordinary sensors and are protected against electronic warfare. They're high quality, mass-produced, and military grade. There's even a theory that they're no longer controlled by humans, but by AI. According to other Russian sources, their speed has doubled to about 300 kilometers per hour, which is much faster compared to the quadcopters and hexacopters that Russia is used to. With the number of new designs Ukraine has released in recent months, two stand out the most: the Bumblebee and the Hornet. The Bumblebee, which was first used in 2025, uses advanced technology. According to a report, it can take off and hover without a pilot, navigate to the target area, identify, follow, and chase the target, and carry out the final strike without any human input. Because it is autonomous, it is almost immune to jamming, since there is no signal that can be intercepted. It also has a wider range compared to fiber optic drones, and it can't be easily disconnected from the operator. If last year the Bumblebee was still rare, now it is mass-produced and can be seen all over the front line. But what worries Russia more is the Hornet, a fixed-wing strike drone that also uses AI for targeting and the final attack. The Hornet uses shaped fragmentation warheads that explode together with the drone itself upon impact, making it almost impossible for Russia to study it after it has been used. It's very cheap to make and lightweight, but it has high-quality cameras that provide clear images for the onboard AI to use. Although not as many, other advanced drones with great potential are also continuing to emerge. For example, on the very day this episode was written, a Ukrainian defense company called Airlogics introduced two new strike drones. The first is called Anubis, a long-range weapon designed to be difficult to detect by radar. The second one is Setbacks, which was made for swarm attacks, meaning simultaneous attacks by multiple drones. For ordinary Russian soldiers, the arrival of these drones is a threat on a whole new level. For several years, the front line seemed like a game. In the race for technology, one side invents a new drone, and the other side creates a countermeasure, and this keeps happening over and over again. But now it seems that Ukraine's new technologies are changing the whole game in a way that Russia is not yet ready to match. Drones with full AI capability can avoid jamming technology, and they also can't be detected by the handheld drone detectors used by Russian soldiers. According to a Russian military blogger named Yuri Kartin, it's time to tell the truth. The enemy dominates the drone war. It's not just the technology that's the problem, but also the way Ukraine uses their drones is very effective. Instead of focusing only on long-range deep strikes, Ukraine is targeting mid-range targets, supply depots, ammunition stockpiles, and staging areas. These are the places that are critical to maintaining Russia's operations on the front line. Ukraine's drones are very effective at attacking Russian soldiers while they are gathering in places they think are safe. Whether it's soldiers, vehicles, supplies, or ammunition, mid-range drones have a significant impact on Russia's ability to prepare for advanced movements, resupply, or send reinforcements. Because of this, Russia is having difficulty carrying out a proper and organized offensive. Many soldiers on the front line are left in a precarious situation, exposed, exhausted, and without a clear way to recover. According to a Russian scientist named Alexei Chotvy, we have a huge problem with last-mile logistics. Up to 90% of our losses happen here. Even just bringing a drone to the launch point is already a gamble. But perhaps the scariest of all is Ukraine's advancement in unmanned ground vehicles. In mid-April, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that for the first time, Ukraine captured a Russian position using only drones, both aerial and ground, without any accompanying infantry, and most importantly, with no casualties on their side. According to war expert Lawrence Friedman, this operation is believed to have taken place in Kharkiv Oblast in 2025. And since then, the use of this kind of technology has been further intensified. At present, there are already hundreds of combat-capable UGVs in some parts of the front line, while thousands are being used for logistics and resupply. According to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, UGVs carried out 9,000 missions in March 2026 alone. Although most of these are for supply missions, their impact on the course of the war cannot be denied, especially in increasing efficiency and reducing risks. These UGVs help lessen the fatigue and danger for Ukrainian soldiers, keeping them away from direct harm while still supplying them, even when they're just hiding in foxholes and other shelters. In some areas, there are so many of these unmanned combat systems that Russian soldiers are forced to retreat, surrender, or fight for their lives. In southern Ukraine, UGVs are being combined with tactical aerial drones and human shock troops in new ways, with each enhancing the other's capabilities. According to a report, there was a UGV assault in the eastern part of Ukraine in late February. They used a UGV equipped with thermobaric rockets and powerful explosive payloads to assault a fortified Russian position. The operators were at a remote command post, safe from the front line. Of the estimated 10 Russian soldiers in the area, 9 were killed by the UGV. The remaining one was immediately finished off by a kamikaze UAV. Despite the intensity of threats from Ukraine, that was only half of the problem for the Russian soldiers. For ordinary Russian soldiers, the increase in new tactics and technology from Ukraine is already a huge threat to their lives. Russia was not able to keep up in developing similar technology to create effective countermeasures. The changes in their tactics are still not enough to fight against UGVs, and their strategy is also not being adjusted for the continuous drone strikes on their rear areas. On one hand, this could still be understandable. It's normal in war for one side to innovate faster, but what's worse is that it seems Russia's own leadership is making the situation even worse. According to reports from Russian veterans and military bloggers, the Russian Ministry of Defense allegedly decided to limit or block the supply of FPV drones to the front line in order to reserve them for specialized unmanned units. If this is true, this is a huge problem. On the modern battlefield, operations are 24/7, and there are always reconnaissance, bomber, and kamikaze drones in the air. They can identify and destroy a target in just a few minutes. For Russian soldiers, FPV drones are very important for their own surveillance and to respond quickly to threats. It's not just availability that matters. Response speed is important too. On the battlefield, where targets appear and disappear quickly, decisions have to be made within seconds. The lack of FPV drones puts them at a greater disadvantage. Right now, Russia lacks drone operators on the front line. And even when they arrive, there are still problems with coordination and quick response. In other words, while Ukraine is getting stronger and more advanced, Russia is falling behind, and in some instances, it even seems like they're the ones undermining their own capabilities. As a result, Russia could end up in a situation where some of their best FPV drone operators on the front line are being eliminated, simply because they're not part of the official drone force. According to a Russian military blogger named Andrei Filov, this decision will result in the loss of personnel trained in drones in exchange for massive losses on the front line. Even the little effectiveness that the soldiers worked hard for will be lost. At best, they will be transferred to the unmanned systems forces. At worst, they will just be depleted in constant assaults. Filov added that the reason for this decision from the first Deputy Minister of Defense of Russia could possibly be economic. In his words, the centralization of UAVs is a dream for major defense suppliers. Small manufacturers, frontline engineers, and passionate individuals are being squeezed out. The innovation market, which relies on speed and flexibility, is gradually collapsing. The result is less movement on the battlefield, but bigger profits for large companies. On paper, Russia's unmanned drone forces looked promising. It was established in November 2025, and leadership was handed over to a lieutenant colonel named Yuri Vaganov, a leader who reportedly had no actual military service experience and no formal military education. He even had an unofficial call sign Toilet. Although he is not known as a skilled soldier, he now holds almost a monopoly on the supply of FPV drones for the Russian military. Under his leadership, it seems that Russia has set aside previous technologies, lessons learned, and even the expertise of earlier experimental drone units. This is despite the fact that those units were successful in adapting drone technology to the battlefield in Ukraine. Instead, what the drone force is doing now is recruiting many operators who know how to use the basic hardware that Vaganov can provide. According to another military blogger, Vladimir Romanov, instead of building their own force using modern frontline experience, the drone forces are trying to poach the best operators and technicians from other units, which leaves a shortage of manpower in critical areas. He also added that the authorities are aware of these so-called training centers that are just for show, only opening when there is an inspection, even though funding from the Ministry of Defense continues. The situation is getting worse because, reportedly, Vaganov is trying to expand his control over the supply of drones, including civilian-led efforts that help fill the shortages. Even before he took charge, the shortage of drones at the front line was already severe. So, some Russian volunteer groups were forced to get drones and parts from China just to support their soldiers. But now, even those imports are being blocked by Russian customs. In addition, the new restrictions on Telegram in Russia make fundraising even more difficult, and the crackdowns on VPNs and cryptocurrency could be the final blow to those efforts. Aside from the issue of drone technology, it seems that the Russian military leadership has fully embraced a brutal formula they've long used, sacrificing countless Russian soldiers' lives in exchange for a few hundred meters of progress on the battlefield. According to reports from inside Russia, as the value of tanks and heavy armored vehicles in modern warfare gradually diminishes, tank units are also slowly being disbanded. Its soldiers are being taken one by one and sent to frontline assault units until it reaches the point where the entire platoon or company exists only on paper. There are also reports that even specialists, including highly skilled professionals, are being sent to assault units even if that is not their expertise, even though their skills are critical in other parts of the front line. Even more concerning is the report from Russian journalist Sergei Kov. In mid-April, he said that it seems organized crime has already infiltrated the Russian army. He refers to this as an organized nest of thieves, rooted in many dugouts and barracks of our armed forces. According to Kov, this started to grow stronger when Russia began recruiting a large number of convicted criminals into the military. They reportedly adapted quickly and began to establish their own system, similar to prison culture within the army itself. Eventually, they reportedly gained control over the enlisted ranks, including contract soldiers who were sent on the most dangerous missions in no man's land. These soldiers are forced to give a portion of their salary to the syndicates, threatened with violence if they don't comply, and pressured to join groups or face even greater danger. According to the report, these groups seem to have protection from some military inspectors and prosecutors, while junior officers rarely visit their personnel and avoid any actions that might cause trouble. If you think that's bad enough, it's not. We haven't even mentioned Ukraine's long-range strike campaign that hit a large part of Russia's oil refining capability in the past 2 months. Ukraine's growing capability in drone interceptors that can shoot down Russia's low-flying strike drones, the upcoming major increase in Ukraine's drone production supported by Western allies, and perhaps most sensitive of all, The possibility that Russia may start conscripting wealthier ethnic Russians from major cities, while gradually tightening control over digital communications to control possible public backlash. For now, we'll leave those issues aside for another time. In closing, let's listen to what a Russian military blogger, Yevgeny Goldman, said. "This is crazy, guys. This is what war is like. It's as if they're completely outpacing us. We're trying to catch up like a turtle, but they're moving so fast it feels like they're cheating." And it's true, it seems Russia is really falling behind. At present, they have no easy way to regain the advantage they've lost. Thank you for watching.